So from here, we switch gears to the NMDPRA boss versus Dangote matter. A lot of documents have been flying around, guys. Jeffrey, Bukola.
So that's
Speaking of which.
Yes, that's the NMDPRA boss. Before we get to our conversation on the economy, so the NMDPRA boss, Mr. Ahmed Farouk, said, reading out the disclaimer, there was a release to the effect that he was responding to the allegations leveled against him by Aliko Dangote. He said, no, that did not emanate from him. He's aware of the allegations that have been leveled against him. He's not interested in engaging in public brickbat, that now the case is at the table of an anti-graft agency, and that will provide an opportunity for him to distill the issues and clearly clarify or clear his name from all of the allegations. That's coming from Engineer Farouk Ahmed. It's known as the authority chief executive of the NMDPRA, because Dangote Refinery, Aliko Dangote has taken him to the ICPC to say, come and explain your wealth, because we know how much you earn. You're living above your means. So now we leave it. It's not in court, so we can comment about it, but we'll leave investigations to the regulators to do their work. So that's as much as it goes as far as these issues are concerned. But we'll switch gears now to the conversation around the economy. Bukola.
Yes, indeed. And Mr. Paul Alaje joins us. He's an economist. He joins us virtually on the program. Good morning, Mr. Alaje. Thank you for joining us on the program.
Thank you so much for having me. A beautiful morning to you, ma'am.
Yes, indeed. First of all, I would like you to take a look at the elements in the medium-term expenditure framework and fiscal strategy paper, which will form the, board for which Mr. President is going to present the 2026 budget. Against a backdrop of current global realities, oil benchmark, help us understand the practicality before we begin to look at the implications of this.
Well, MTEF are very important, and FSP, important documents that successive governments have written in order for them to allow the subsequent year budget to come out from it, and we can have plans. Usually, as practices in Nigeria, they leave it around 3 years. The one we are talking about now is the MTEF/FSP 2026 to 2028. And having looked at the document carefully, government have included some parameters. What we usually look at as economists is what is the benchmark, what is government looking at in short term or in medium term. Government is looking at crude oil price to be less than $65 per barrel, especially for next year. We have also seen reduction in the projection of how much crude should be produced daily. I think it reduced from 2 million barrels per day to about 1,800 barrels a day. We have also seen some projection of government around inflation at about 16%. The exchange rate, I think that is left at 1,512. Among other parameters government is looking at. The interesting thing for next year is that it's a pre-election year. Usually we expect the economy to expand. Government is looking at above 4% for growth rate for next year. But when you have such expansion in economy as a result of election influence, you might also have inflation spike. Whether mildly or harshly, it also depends on how this is being managed. The work of monetary authority for them to combat inflation, and also how responsible fiscal authority manage the environment during pre-election year. We have a lot to do with what we are going to see next year. So this is the benchmark, among other things, that government is looking at. The devil is in the details. We are looking at approximately 45% of recurrent non-debt expenditure. We are looking at another very major one is debt service, which is also going to take significant part. We're also expecting, my worry about the entire FSP, MTF FSP, is the amount voted to capital expenditure. Capital expenditure in percentage-wise, even though in naira terms, looks bigger than what you have in 2022-2023, but in percentage-wise, it seems to have reduced significantly. Recall that when we talk about capital expenditure, we are talking of investment in an economy. And when you talk about recurrent expenditure, you are either talking of withdrawal from the economy, especially if you are using such fund to service foreign loans. And when you talk about other things regarding recurrent expenditure, you are talking of consumption. At the end of the day, what matters the most to the population or to a population is capital expenditure. Over the years, let me say in the last 15 years, Nigeria has been around 30 to 25% as against what is recommended of 50%. Some nations move as high as 60%. Reducing this to far less than 30%, far less than 25% might be what government will need to quickly think about before that budget is presented to the National Assembly. Government is looking at reduced debt service to revenue. That's the cost of service, cost of debt to revenue is proposed to far reduce compared to what we're experiencing now. Recall that it has been mentioned that Nigeria has since covered revenue expectation, but recently a top government official has revealed that we might even have revenue shortfalls. When you look at this and you're able to project into the future, you know that it's important for us to clearly have a concern around what revenue service will truly be when the budget is eventually implemented.
I know we're speaking specifically to the MTEF and FSP, which we expect a prerequisite to the presentation of the 2026 budget that we expect to be presented sometime this week, maybe at most next week, before Christmas. That's the expectation, because this is the latest it has been presented within this period. But generally, I want you to speak as an economist about how you will assess the micro and macroeconomic health of our country, because there's always an argument, and that argument, I don't know whether it will ever go away. So if you speak to persons in government, you will hear external reserve, unencumbered, in over $40 billion in those excess. You hear stability, which is correct in terms of the FX. We've seen even the Naira strengthen based on a couple of factors, both external and internal. You hear we pushed inflation down to now 14%, albeit rebased. And I can go on and on as to some of the pointers. In fact, the other one is the debt service to revenue that used to literally consume every penny we make. Now there's a room for some breather. The other day I saw, I think, IMO Economic Summit, if I stand to be corrected, but I think that's where he made that statement, if I'm correct, where I think one of the ministers, is it Wale Edo, I'm not sure. I think I saw the video, I think he made it at that event, where he talked about that Nigerians used to spend almost 90-something% of their income on household, things, just to use a layman's term, but now it's 50%, which I totally disagree with him, because I can just use my electricity as an example that he was wrong, because I used to spend 100,000 naira to charge my my electricity, and it takes me for almost 3 months. Now that 100,000 naira can barely do a month, so I don't know where he's getting his figures from. But generally, if you look at it, there are good numbers and there are not to be desired numbers. When it trickled down to the macro level, the people still are saying, look, what exactly are they talking about? So give us your assessment of the health of the economy, macro and micro.
Yeah, thank you so very much for your question. Economists really are concerned about those two branches, the macroeconomics to start with. And in macroeconomics, there are indicators. We are not just to say, oh, this is what I feel about economics. Economics is not a field of feelings. It's a field of science and indeed social science. First, we look at what is growth. What is happening to growth? Growth is expected to be positive and to be sustained over a period of time. And if we have changes to it, this growth will then transform to development. Desire of several nations is to move from just being a third world country to a first world country. Nigeria, according to the report shared by the Bureau of Statistics, have seen over 3% GDP growth rate, nearly 4% GDP growth rate. This is commendable, even though what is expected for us as a nation that want to eat that $1 trillion economy as projected by Mr. President is to have a minimum of 17% GDP growth rate. Yes, we are positive, we commend it, but we also need to put our eye on the ball. If we don't put our eye on the ball, there are countries, smaller in population, smaller in capacity, that are leaving us behind. What have they done? If time permits me, I will share solutions and articulate how we can move from where we are to where we should be. The next one is inflation. Nigeria inflation at this point in time is important for us to be careful, not to say headline inflation compared to last year is 14% or is 50%. Both will not be very correct. This is the reason. We are currently going through a period of rebasing. Now we have done rebasing of inflation numbers, and what you have now in econometrics can be posted as outliers. Please, for those who may not really comprehend what I meant, I like to break down what I say. Now, when I say outlier, it doesn't mean that the people posting the numbers are lying or they are saying the truth. It's none of the two. It's none of the two. We're saying that we have made a major adjustment to how we calculate inflation, and that ultimately will affect the outcome of what the numbers will be. That perhaps is the reason why we have seen that immediately after rebasing, we saw inflation gain 10%. If you ask those who are watching us now, live, or those watching on YouTube, and of course those that will comment on X, you can check if in that period, I think around April or May or April this year, if inflation for general average price of goods and services we consume, if it ever dropped by 10%, the answer is no. I'm a Nigerian too. The answer is no. And the chief of Bureau of Statistics told us that this rebasing exercise we carried out is not that you start seeing price dropped. Yes, price will drop over time, but that's not the reason why you might see. What we have done is that we have adjusted the base year to reflect some realities. So that's what it is. So the basket was adjusted, base year was adjusted, and that's what it is. So before you start checking what the true figure of inflation will be, it will be around Y2 2026 or end of Y1, that's end of half year from July. You start seeing what, because now we'll be comparing the rebase year with the rebase year. What we are doing now is to compare this year, rebase year, to the year before the rebasing. Clearly, the economic prosperity in 2009 that we're using before is a far more prosperous year than the current year we have adopted. So that will show. But whatever it is, we're actually going to have the impact of rebasing. Even though we get to next year, the impact will still be there. But the impact will not be as we have seen it now. So when people say that, oh, maybe the agency is lying, no, the agency carried out an exercise. The exercise will not totally reflect reality. So for many people that have asked me, inflation, I went to one of the professional bodies in Nigeria, top professional bodies, and they asked me, oh, you said inflation is 4%. It led to a major, it led to people speaking back, no, it cannot be true. And I said, listen, inflation is 4%, you should ask me using which methodology. As a speaker there, I said unemployment, I beg your pardon, is 4% because, which is another macroeconomic variable, because we have adjusted the base, the methodology. Before now, we were using 20 hours a week. That is, if you work with your organization, Channels Television, for 4 hours a day, 5 days, you have worked 20 hours a week. You are now we are going to calculate that you are employed. That is no longer the methodology. Right. The methodology now is that if you work for 1 hour, that is, if this show were to be 1 hour, and you work every week for 1 hour, irrespective of the pay, whether you are paid 70,000 or 1 billion naira, you are now classified as employed. So when people need to understand what is driving, my advice, of course, to the Bureau of Statistics is that put all the numbers there. Put the one ULO said you should use 1 hour a week. They say it's not even the influence of ULO, it's what is globally acceptable. But also put the reality of Africa. Now, in those economies, income is determined per hour, so it's understandable. But in this economy, most income are determined per month. And for you to work in major establishments, you need to work 8 hours. Right. So that we compare things correctly and know that, yes, this is what is globally acceptable, especially for most part of Europe. But in Africa, this is what is obtainable. So when people see that unemployment is 4 to 5%, but we still have a lot of unemployment in the real sense, people now start accusing, maybe we are not doing the right thing. We're saying, let the numbers reflect the reality. That does not mean that the number release is wrong, because when I tell you it's 1 hour a week, then it makes sense that we are talking of 4%, because for that number, the actual rate we should be less than 2%.
All right.
But when you talk about 4%, then you know there is an issue. We are to adopt the 20%. The number we should be less than 10%, which is single digit. The same with inflation. It should be single digit. It's a major improvement from where we were anyways. But if you compare, if you use the previous rate to compare, then you definitely not have the numbers we're having today. Then the positive one for me here is what is happening to exchange rate. We have largely seen stability. We have seen reserve, thankfully, to Dangote's refinery. And this brings me here. Now we need to be very careful. Very, very careful not to destroy businesses that are building Nigeria.
Right. You can land on that point. I know you've built it up to this climax.
So we need to be careful not to destroy businesses that are building Nigeria. You must have seen movie, The Men That Built America. I'm not saying that it's exactly the same thing. But you see, Dangote's production of diesel and PMS has been largely, at least more than 30%, accountable for the reserve that is surging, that is increasing. What does that mean to you, Mr. Kayode, that the reserve is surging? It means that the money in your pocket will not get devalued. I don't think there's any central bank in the world that say, I want to punish my people, therefore let me devalue their currency. So we need to look for what are those businesses that are giving us import substitution and at the same time promoting export. I completely support competition, but in doing all of this, we should be careful not to destroy our best.
Very interesting points there, coming at this time where there's been that back and forth between the NMDPRA's boss and Dangote. Well, more from the billionaire businessman Dangote. But while we can talk about that all day, and it's a very important point, you know, the economy and the indices that we feel is also quite important. I really wish we could rebase the prices of items in the market. Since we're rebasing, we've rebased unemployment figures, we've rebased inflation. Let's go to the market and rebase this thing. So a bag of rice will be rebased to 10,000 naira. That would be great. That's the kind of rebase Nigerians want. But, you know, it just reflects what statistics or data can do sometimes. And, you know, one comment usually attributed to Mark Twain, whether rightly or wrongly, is lies, damned lies, and statistics. So you can use statistics to tell whatever story you want to tell. And I must commend you, because year in, year out, you've organized the Paul Alaji Colloquium, and you had major conversations around how Nigeria can lead Africa from poverty to prosperity. You had representations across border. And I must commend you. It hurts that I couldn't attend this year, and I want to apologize. But I want you to speak to how we must lift Nigerians out of poverty. We have such a huge young population, the largest, one of the largest in the world, I must say, in terms of the percentage of the bigger population. So we have a lot of energy, but still we have a lot of poverty. What is missing? Because the president has spoken about letting the poor breathe, but we're just rebasing.
Thank you so very much. You are so correct. I'm quite passionate about Nigeria. I carry no other passport. I'm a citizen of this country, and I'm proud to be a citizen of Nigeria. So here is it. How do we lead people from poverty to prosperity? In spite of some numbers that are not saying where they should be, and numbers that are not reflecting reality, and some that are reflecting reality. So we have the three types of numbers out there. So here is it. We need to have, so the challenge we have, I can summarize it into a phrase: coordination failure. Coordination failure. It's been around for a while. What should be the first thing we should have as a nation? Most nations that have studied, South Korea, and after that, Poland, after that, even countries that are at war, Russia, and a few of other countries, to a large extent, many of them, either in most part or in all part, have gotten electricity correctly. There will be no progress for a nation with a kind of population in a given geopolitical zone or in a given continent that has not gotten electricity correctly. That is one item of all lot of 10, even though there are more, but 10 critical points. Nigerian authority across political party. We have APC today. I don't know what we will have tomorrow. But what we must do, and this as a matter of fact must be backed by legislation. All political parties in the National Assembly, State Assembly, must agree that we want to have a national development strategy This development strategy will start forth as a plan and must be implemented. What was dominate this strategy will be electricity. In the next 5 years, if you cannot supply electricity to the entire Nigeria, can we start it one geopolitical zone after the other? Pick one in the North Central, maybe FCT. 24 hours power supply in Lagos, in Kano, in Imo, in name it, Port Harcourt, that's Rivers, in Taraba. Pick them one after the other. And don't pick them because, I like people from here, I don't. These people are Muslims or Christian. No. It will be, where do we already have some level of production happening? After that, we can now move to the next stage, because we call it agglomerative economics, and grow that. But you see, we cannot be working on power and leave the rest. The next is what happens to rail. All geopolitical zones must be connected with rails, which means we are connecting our farm areas to our urban center where consumption is taking place. If we do this, we are going to reduce real unemployment. Going back to 2023 figures, that was 33.1%. We're going to slash that by not less than 25% only in 2 years. If you get power, if you get rail, and the third one, which of course is the most important, I've studied China and South Korea. I've studied Poland. I realize that their real capacity is in production. Remember that you cannot produce if you don't have sufficient energy. Also recall that you cannot produce if your rail system is not that functional. What should we therefore do? Go into production, massive production. Look at places where we already have environment supporting this production. Or for instance, look at Jos. What do we have in Jos? So look at what Jos can easily produce. They have all manner of natural resources, fruits, agricultural resources. What can we produce in Jos? Instead of locating the factory in another place. Benue is another thing. Now, when you look at all of this, even production will reduce insecurity. Because all of this will not function if there are high level of insecurity. Look at what Ogun and Lagos, Ibadan, Oyo, they are doing together. Even though it might be unconscious, all of them are not in the same political party. But Oyo's development, Oyo's growth, Lagos growth seems to have sandwiched Ogun. Because Ogun is growing. You can see single largest factory is happening in Ogun. Why? Because it's certain that the population in Lagos and Oyo will take significant part of output. Can we repeat the same thing with sufficient energy supply, with quality road, and so on and so forth? Now, saying all of this, it will be unfair if you don't create a healthy and well-educated population.
Indeed.
Education and health will be two major things that will anchor this development we want to see. Therefore, it does not take 20 years to realize madness, because if you do, the question is, when are we going to practice it? If we have a plan that says only 15 years or max 20 years, irrespective of who is in government. Remember, the first thing I said, all of this will not amount to much if it is not passed into law by the National Assembly, talking about the House of Representatives and the Senate.
Mr. Alaje, your reflections cause for even more reflections this morning. What's our area of core competence as a nation? What is, our competitive edge in the area of production that will lead us to becoming an exporting nation, not at a below average level, but at an excellent level? And we hope that all of the energies and the resources are being directed towards that goal, not just at the federal level, but also, at the subnational level. We must thank you for the expertise that you have brought to this conversation. Mr. Paul Alaje is of the SPM Professionals, and he's an economist. Thank you for your time on the program.
Thank you so much for having me.
And so we're going to practicalize this conversation on the economy with, another outlook, and that would be, what is Dirty December going to look like with your own purchasing power in consideration? So stay with us for this next one. We'll be right back.